Yeah, good evening, everyone. Hope I'm audible and everything in my screen here.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So, where are we, guys? What are we discussing in the last class? What topics we
Map,
have
map,
of your ECMA 6?
map, sir. Today we discuss promise.
Yeah, we discussed about the map data structure and on
Map and filter.
the new methods on the top of your array, right? Find, filter, map, etc. stuff and all. Okay. So today we are about to discuss another important concept of your ECMA 6 or the latest JavaScript, we can say. So there is something called as promises and there is something called as async and await. Okay, so these are the two predefined keywords using which we could able to write the asynchronous piece of coding. And promises is one of the new topic being supported in your JavaScript, using which we could able to achieve the concept of anytime you want to handle the success and error type of coding, instead of writing if conditions and all, we can create a promise where you could able to handle the resolve and reject things. So that is what we are going to discuss today. Okay. So first, let's talk about the promises, because async and await are related to the promises concept. Okay. So first, let us see what actually the promises are.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಂತೆ ಚಿಕ್ಕನ್ ಗ್ಯಾಸ್ ಬಂದಾಚ
Okay. So the very first thing is there is a predefined class which is being supported in your JavaScript, which is called as promise. Okay. So a promise, as like your normal English meaning, what you have, promise means a thing what you're going to say that you're going to do. So there are only two options, either it happened or not happened, as simple as it is. So if it is happened successfully, we call it as a resolve. If it has not fulfilled the promise, that we call it as a reject. Okay, so promise is any piece of job, if it happens in a successful way, what is going to happen? If it is going through an error, it is in a reject way, what is going to happen? So in order to create these type of coding in your JavaScript, you have something called as a promise predefined class. Anytime you want to create a promise in JavaScript, you simply say something called var my promise is equal to new promise of. Okay, anytime you want to instantiate a new promise, you simply use the keyword called as new and promise as a predefined class. And every promise is going to take two callback methods, which we call it as a resolve and reject. Every promise is going to take two callback methods. One is resolve. As I said you, if it is successful, what is going to happen? If it is not successful, what is going to happen? Assume I want to go with the user AVG thing. Okay, where AVG is equal to say some 45.6. Assume I just hard coded it. You know, like how to read the value from the user, how to process it, and how to calculate the average. Assume I have an average. My requirement, and okay, as I said, you in case of your promise, you have two callback things. One is resolve and one is reject. These are not predefined things. You can even change it, like success error. You can do whatever it is because those are formal parameters. Now, I have a very simple condition. If my AVG is greater than or equal to 40, okay, I simply say resolve. Okay, resolve is the method, what I'm simply calling here. If it is not the case, I simply say reject. Okay, I have a very simple requirement. Whenever the average value is greater than equal to 40, I'm calling this resolve. I mean, this is a success callback method and this is a reject callback method. Okay. On the top, how you are going to invoke this promise? The promise can be done in two ways. One way is directly promise dot then method we have a predefined method, predefined method under the promise, like promise dot then, which is going to take again 2 parameters. I mean, you need to pass this 2 parameters here. Now I simply say that console.log passed. If that is not the case, for this then, you can even comma, I mean, you're passing the 2 callback methods, right? So you simply say console.log failed. This is the better way of coding. You may ask me a question, boss, like if average equal to so and so, if average not equal to so and so, you can even write a normal if condition coding and you can do that, right? But there, user or the developer is not having a clear idea that when it is success, what is going to happen, when it is a failure, what is going to happen. I mean, we are just simply writing some if else condition. If else is never a case that success and failure. If else is something called, now when I say if gender equal to male, you're doing something. If gender equal to female, you're doing something. So that is not actually a success and failure part, isn't it? So user don't get a clear idea that whether it is success error handling or a normal condition. So anytime we have a piece of coding which is relevant to something called when the user data is something good or something success, so this has to be done. When there is into some error, this has to be done. So in order to handle such things, we need to go with the promises concept here. Okay, so what we have done is I simply created a new promise. For the promise, I'm expecting some 2 callback. And what is this resolve? This resolve is, this is the method. The first method, what you're passing, that will be going into the resolve. The second parameter, what we are passing, it is going to be the reject. Okay, so now if you save this guy, come back and open in the browser. Now, if you inspect this, go for console, you have a message something called as passed. If the average is something called as 34, it will automatically invoke the reject method. This is how simple the explanation of promises is. You take a job, if under this, whatever the condition you put it out, you put a Ajax call, if the response is there, it is success. If the response is not there, failure. So any job you do under the promise, if it is success, you simply call the first parameter, which we call it as a resolve. And the second thing is reject. And here, the second way of syntax is either you can directly specify then method, or you simply say my promise dot then. Okay. For then, I'm going to invoke a callback method, console.log passed. Okay. And dot, there is something called as catch method. We can even specify this guy. Now I say console.log failed. Okay. Now if you save this guy, come back, cast 1 and failed 1, I'll say save this guy, come back and reload this page. You see here, failed 1 is getting caught. So either you can directly specify the 2 parameters with comma separator, the resolve and reject methods, or you can specify dot then with one of the success callback, dot catch, which is into the error handling. So this we can say error handling. This we can say something called as resolve or success handling, like this. This is what promises are called as, guys. Anywhere you want to do any piece of job, when it is success, you want to do something. If it is error, you want to do something. Simply go with the promises. A promise is a predefined object in your JavaScript. Whenever you want to instantiate a promise, it always takes 2 things. One is the resolve and one is the reject. Resolve is success and here it is not predefined. Now I can say something called as ABC and there is something called as XYZ. So this will be ABC and this will be XYZ, same as it is. Now if you come back and reload the page, things will execute because those are just formal parameters. Formal parameters can be any name, right? But just to have a relevant name, we are saying it as a resolve and reject. Okay. So any questions on this, guys? Anyone?
Clear, sir.
In the Ajax school, we can use this.
Even
Sorry, Robin, could you repeat your question again?
Sir, in the Ajax call, we can always use waiting statement like when it is success, then response back. When it's fail, it showing the server is error. And
Exactly.
another method we use timing, the holding the time.
Exactly. So anywhere, right? I mean, actually, for holding the time, there is a next concept, something called as async and await. Okay.
Okay, sir.
But for now, like when you go with an Ajax call, you're putting an Ajax call. When there is a success, do this. When you fail, you do this. You simply go with these type of stuff.
Okay, sir. Thank
Yeah.
you. Sir.
Any more questions? Anyone? Any other questions?
Sir, hello.
Sir, what is the advantage of this method over the try catch method?
Okay, Stray asked, it is completely different, right? When you go into the try catch, it is exception handling, isn't it? Exception handling is if there is an error, application is completely stopping execution. Instead of stopping the execution, we make the application to go with further execution by handling the error what we get raised at the time of runtime. That is what exception handling promises. You're doing one thing when the job is happening. No, when you say something called as average is greater than equal to 40, you're happening a job, average is less than equal to 40, it is failed. Does it mean that it's an error in your application? No, right? That is completely different. Exception handling is when there is an error, application is stopping its execution. We are making that guy to handle that, and we are letting that guy to go further. That is what exception handling. So these guys completely different. You got the difference?
Yes.
Okay, so you might be confused just because of the catch method, guys, but that catch is different and this catch is different. Here we are not going with an error handling. We are saying that when the job, whatever you're doing, if it is going in a success direction, do something. If it is going in a failed direction, do something else. That's it. It's completely different. Shweta is having a question. Sir, when we know that these methods should use or try catch method, that's what Shweta just answered, right? This is completely different. Now, okay, let us say I'm not using this catch method and I'm using this guy here. Do you see any type of error handling here? Might be you guys confused with the dot catch method, but now if you see, do you see any type of error handling? Can you say that, boss, instead of this coding, I want to go with try catch? Completely not matchable, right? When you say try catch, application is having some runtime errors. To handle that, we are going with the try catch. Okay, that is completely different. Hope I'm clear, Shweta and Shreyas. Next, any more questions?
Sir,
Yes, please.
From the line number 20 to 24, you are
20 to 24, yes.
yes, you are not passing the parameters like resolve and reject. Then how can we find it? Which one is executed?
That is what, right? When you say resolve, this is the one, the first parameter. Here, what is the need of passing an parameter? Order of passing is matter, right? Then method is taking two parameters, 1, 2. The first guy will go here, second guy will go here, right? Okay. If at all you really wanted that parameter, you can even do this. In case of resolve, you pass a parameter, something called as pass. In case of reject, you pass a parameter, something called as fail. Now, whatever the parameter you're passing, that you will get it as a response. Okay, for this guy, you get this something called as a message. Now, instead of failed, something called as got plus MSG. Instead of passed, I say something called as got, something called as response. Now, if you save this, come back and reload the page, whatever the message you pass, you're going to get it. If you want, you can pass the parameter, but anyway, the order of methods what you're passing. Now, if you say you take these guy and make it as a second parameter, first parameter always goes into the success, second parameter will go into the reject. Am I clear, Sham?
Yes. Is it following based on the we are passing the order?
Order of the parameters. The first parameter will go into the resolve, second parameter will go into this guy. Or in case of your then method, dot then whatever the first parameter you have, it will be going into the resolve. And if it is catch, that parameter will go into the reject automatically. That is what the predefined promises doing the job for us.
Okay, clear.
Yeah. Next, any more questions? Make sure you're clear, guys, because the next thing, whatever you have, the async and await, it is mostly dependent on the promises.
Wow.
Okay, can we go forward?
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay. So the next concept what we have is, in your latest JavaScript, 2 predefined keywords are being supported, which is something called as async and which is something called as await. Okay. Hope everybody know what I mean by async. It is synchronous type of coding. I mean asynchronous type of coding and synchronous type of coding if at all you want to do. So these 2 predefined keywords are mostly useful. Let us see step by step. Okay. Okay. I say something called as a script. For example, I'm writing a function, say some display info. Okay. He is doing some business logic internally. And based on that, say something called console.log from display info. He might be doing some job. And I simply say return, say some 10. Okay. Now I simply invoke this guy, display info. If you come back, open in the browser, you go with inspect, go with console, it automatically says that from display info. Done. It's a normal function definition here. Now, what do you mean by async keyword? Any function can be added with a predefined keyword, something called as async. Only functions can be added with a keyword called as function. Very first point. Okay, async is a predefined keyword before defining the function. Either you define it as an arrow function, normal function, whatever it is. But before the function, only you have to define the, you have to make it a assigned keyword. Say, for example, where a is equal to something called as test method. Okay, something like this. Now here you simply say async, something like this. Okay, anytime you're defining a method only for the method, what is this? Yeah. So anytime you're defining a method called as something called as ABC. So this method has to be async. You simply put a keyword called as async. Okay. Now, if you remove this, simply save this guy, come back to the browser and reload the page. Nothing, same as it is. Now, the first question is, what is going to happen whenever you put it as an async? Anytime you put async as a predefined keyword before a function definition, by default, that function will return a promise from it. Okay, by default, that guy is going to return a promise from it. You don't need to return anything. By default, it is going to go with a promise with a resolve which is getting invoked automatically. Okay, for example, I simply say dot then method. When you're going to call this then method, in general, we just saw on the previous example, when I'm applying the then method, is it
It
not
is a
on the
promise.
promise? Yes, it is. But actually here I'm saying display info dot then, whatever the response you got it from there, then you simply say dot then method. And here I simply say, I say some value, console.log value. Okay, save this guy, come back here and reload the page. Whatever the 10 value he has written, could I able to catch that? And I'm not catching just like variable equal to so-and-so, and I'm getting invoked with a then method. In general, whenever you have this, you simply say where p1 equal to new promise. Okay, new promise you need to say. Now you need to call the resolve and reject method. But without creating a promise, by default, every async function will try to return a promise. Either you do it manually or you do it, either you add it manually a promise and you return the promise, or by default the promise will be resulted here. Or else you can simply say where p1 is equal to this display info. Okay, then you can say p1 dot then, because p1 is a promise. Now if you come back and reload the page, I'm getting the same type of output. Now if you ask me a question, boss, why are you using this then method? P1 is not a promise, p1 is a simple method. But this method, even though you're returning a promise or not, it will be returning a default promise with the resolve method. Any questions on this? I have some more discussion on this, but the very first point, have you understood about the async and returning a promise from a async function? Why we are doing this, I will talk. But how we are doing, are you clear?
Can you use cats also?
Actually, the reason why I'm not using the catch here is, you can say this. For example, I say dot catch method, because it is a promise. I can say this catch method, but under this, now I say console.log from catch method. Okay, save this guy, come back and reload the page. Every time it will get only success method, right? Because you are not manually handling the promise. By default, the promise is getting created. And how does the system know that it is success? You have to do something. If it is failure, you have to do something. No, that is the reason it always invokes the resolve method. That is the reason only the first part or the first parameter, which is your result, will be called automatically, not the reject.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Got it? If you say that, no boss, then what if I even want to handle promise? Then you do one thing where say some new promise is equal to new promise. Under that, you specify all the resolve and reject. Now you return this promise. Whatever the promise you do internally, now you return that promise. In that case, then that promise is going to have the success and callback. Obviously, those guys will be called automatically. Am I clear?
Yes, I got it.
Yeah. Next. Come on. Any more questions? Simple. Understand the async keyword. Any function can be added with the async keyword. Only functions can be added. No classes, no data, no variables, etc. Only for the functions you can put the async key. Can I go forward?
Sir,
Yes, please.
at line number 14, actually promise is for this function, promise is created automatically.
Yes.
So it has to hold by accepting any parameter like previous one, sir. Means in previous example, new.
Now say for example, I say display info, right? You pass out the display info, say something called as some 90, some value, you pass it out. Here you got some value. Now based on this value, you return, say for example, if the value is greater than equal to say some 10, return something called as valid. Else return invalid. You can do that as like a normal function, right? Valid. I don't have this. Okay, now if you save this guy, come back here, reload the page. Instead of 10, it is coming like valid. If you have this value greater than equal to, right? Now if I say something called as 5, you should get it as invalid. As simple as it is. Am I clear, Ramna?
Okay, sir.
Yeah, it's like a normal function. Promise is nothing to do here. Normal function can take a parameter. You can use that parameter to return what value has to be if you really wanted that. Next, can I go forward? Is everyone clear? Understand the things clear, guys. If you have any question, let me know. Just give me the line number. I will explain that. Clear? Okay, fine. The next thing what you have is, this is a simple async method. Any function which is having async, which will return a promise. Another keyword what we have is, there is something called as await. Okay, so what do you mean by this await function or await keyword? Await is one of the predefined keyword which can be used only and only within the async function. If at all you have to use this async, now I'm going to define a simple function, something called as some sample. Okay, now I say console.log, say some hello. Okay, I'm simply invoking a sample method. Okay, come back and reload this guy. Hello got invoked. Super fine. Now I say await something called console.log done. Now if I do this, if you come back and reload the page, it simply says that await is only valid inside the asynchronous function. It is a syntactical error if you are using await method in a normal function. It has to be only used under the async function. Now if you come back, the error will not be there because that is valid. You can only make use of the await keyword within the function which is already using a async keyword. Any questions up to this? What is await? I will talk. Where to use? Are you guys clear? Everyone? Okay, nice. Now,
Yes, sir.
next thing is, what is the reason for await we are going to make use? Okay, let me create a separate example on this. Okay, say for example, there is a function do job. Okay, I have a promise inside this where say some p1 is equal to new promise of, okay, we say something called as resolve comma reject. Okay, under this I simply say set timeout. I want to call this resolve. Okay, something called as done, but these guys need to be called after 2 seconds of time. Another brace should be there. Okay, I have a very simple I have created, which is called as promise. And that promise, what actually it is doing is, it is going to put a message, something, it is going to invoke the resolve method after some 2 seconds of time. Okay, now I will say something called var result equal to p1. Okay, I say console.log result. Okay, now if I call this do job method, save this guy, come back, open inside the browser, inspect, go with a console. If you see here, we are getting the promise here. Should say result done. Okay. It is only valid in the asynchronous, obviously. Okay. Now, if you see here, when I'm calling this guy, when I'm saying simply, my expectation is whatever the resolve method, what it is returning, that has to be catched inside the result, and I need to show the result to the user. But now if you save this guy, come back and execute this guy, what is happening? The promise is coming, which is in a pending state. Okay, promise is always having 3 states, guys. Sorry, 4 states: instantiated state, pending state, resolved state, or reject state. This is again a good interview question. 4, what are the states what you have in the promise? The first thing is instantiated. You just invoked this promise. The second thing is it is executing, which is in a pending status. If it is resolved status, otherwise it is into the reject status. 4 status. Now, when I'm coming at line number 17, I'm simply saying that resolve, but my expectation expectation is P1 has to execute that set timeout. After I get a response from the resolve, then only I have to invoke I have to go to the line number 18. But what it is happening now, it is coming to line number 12. Okay, promise got instantiated, promise is getting executed. When you say that line number 17, you're invoking this promise, things are happening. Immediately, whatever the promise data you have, it is getting written. But what I need to do I need to wait for 2 seconds? After that, whatever the message I get, I mean, doesn't matter whether it is 2 seconds, 1 second, or 1,000 seconds, or n number of seconds. I have to show the result only after I get a response from the promise. Okay, so in that case, what I need to do, I simply need to do something called as await. Await is something called wait until the promise is done. Either it might go into the reject state, it might go into the resolve state, but please wait until the promise is done. It is not like just get a response from the promise. I simply use it the await method. Keep waiting until you get a response from this. Now, if you save this, come back here and reload the page. This is what the message I got. What it is saying? Await is invalid. Why so? I haven't used the async function here. Now I say async. Save this guy. Come back here and reload the page. You see, until 2 seconds, I haven't got. I mean, I'm not going into the next line. When I'm coming to the line number 17, now if you see, console.log over here. Okay. Now, if you save it, come back and reload the page. Over here got executed, but next part not yet executed. Why so? I'm waiting for the promise has to finish its job. Only after, I mean, await is wait until you get a response from the promise. Then you go with the next. Any questions here? Understood, everyone? So in the real time, it is very, very useful, guys. Say, for example, remember I was talking about the Ajax calls, synchronous and asynchronous. It's almost like the same piece of coding. I mean, if it is an Ajax call, within the Ajax call itself, you can specify async equal to true or false. But what if you're writing some piece of code, user is doing something, you need to do the remaining job only after the previous job is done. So in that case, async and await, I mean, nowadays, wherever you go with the JavaScript coding, they keep using this async and await method. Very simple to understand, but very powerful in implementation. Okay. Yeah. Any questions, guys? Anyone? Okay. Are we guys clear? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me create one more real-time type of example, same async and await, guys. Okay. Let's use the fetch method. Okay. Let me show you. Data dots, as both of the batches are done with the jQuery part, right? So let me create a JSON object. Say some uname. Say some. Okay, there is a simple JSON object. I'll say let response is equal to fetch method JSON. This has to be from the server, right? Let me write the code, guys, then I'll explain it. Console.log. Headers are fine. Where is the response? If you're not talking, please go into mute, guys. Why it is not getting called? We are using this fetch method, fetch data.json. It is hidden this. We are getting the response actually, but how do we catch that response? Come on. Why am I not getting the data here? Okay, not to waste the time. I will check this, guys. Actually, I thought like using the fetch. I mean, fetch method also actually had a response the data. I just want to show other example for this await and async, but that's fine. I mean, I'll create an example. Anyway, for the 7 a.m. guys, we are still continuing. So somehow the other day I will test it and I will let you know. For the 8:30 batch, guys, I will do an example and I will share you in the group so that you can have a go through on this. Okay. So yes, guys. Any other questions on this async and await? Hope everyone is clear. And promises too.
Sir,
Yes, please.
sir, already async is there. Why we should go for why we should go for sir, what is this?
Await.
Await to achieve the same functionality.
Okay, so Ramna, if you see here, when I say async, it is only returning a promise to you. When I say await, it is making the promise or it is waiting for the promise to completely get executed. Then only I will do the remaining process. Okay, let us see this guy example. Now, if we see here, when I don't give this await, what was the response of this P1? We were using async, right? Then in that case, we expect that done method after the, now if you see here over here, and promise is also, it's still in pending state. Promise is not yet done. Then my question is like, okay, as you said, like async is there, right? Why it is not happening? My expectation is I want to execute line number 19 only after the line number 18 is done. Not every instruction will go one by one flow, right? Some instructions might take some time, like you're putting a request to an Ajax. That might take some time in responding. So you have to wait for that, then only you go with the further. So now in this case, I can say something called as await. Not just async is helping here. I'm using await. Implies when I come to line number 18, I don't go to line number 19 until I get this promise is successful. Now, if you save this, now if you come back and reload the page, over here is getting executed. I'm waiting for that promise to be resolved. Then only I'm going with the further.
Sir, I agree with you, sir. Just once open the program, sir, at line number 18. At line number 18, according to conceptual wise, instead of await, we are using previously async, right? Async true means it's a asynchronous
that is
okay, sir, okay.
Ajax call, right? That is completely
okay.
different.
Yes,
Got
sir.
it? Yeah.
Yes, sir. I got it.
Yeah. Next, any more questions, guys? No questions? I think I have some questions in the chart here. Sir, we have to use async and await to run a function. Not to just run a function, Varaprasad. Normal function also can be executed, right? The first thing is async. Anytime you want to return a promise from a function, we use the async keyword. Second thing is when some set of instructions are getting executed within the function, you want to do next job only after the first job is done. Because not every time every other job will execute immediately, right? It may take some time, 2 seconds, 1 second or so. You want to make the other instructions to get executed only after the previous instruction gets executed. You can simply make use of the await keyword, not just only to run the function. Okay. Okay, fine, guys. Yeah, for my 7 a.m. batch, why we are using promises? Wow, that's a good question. Why we use promises? What are we doing in the time of promise discussion, Shimran? Seeman? Okay, so promises, right? Anytime you want to execute a piece of code where you want to handle the error part at the same time resolve part, we go with the promises. It can be done even using your if conditions also, but that is not a valid way of writing the code. That is the reason we go with the promises. And to create a promise, we make use of the predefined JavaScript class promise. Okay. Okay, so fine, guys. Sir, await is only always use set timeout. Not every time set timeout, Pawan. The thing was, I want to do some job after some time. For now, I have only set timeout method. What if you are putting an Ajax call to the server? It is taking some time in responding. So that also will go here, right? Any instruction, you are writing some piece of code, the further job need to be executed only after the complete previous job is done. That is where you go with the await. It is not like every time it is set timeout. I don't have other example. So I want to make a imitation of the code, like where I can say some, it is not executing immediately, it is taking some time. That is the reason I'm using set timeout, but it is not every time set timeout. Am I clear, Pawan? But what is the difference between Ajax and await? Come on, why you are comparing the Ajax with await here? Ajax is a server call, going to the server, getting the response, hitting a web service, getting the response. Await is some piece of instruction. Doesn't matter whether it is an Ajax call, you are writing some normal JavaScript code. You're taking the value from the user, you're processing it, you're doing something, you're going to the database, getting the data. I mean, you do any other job, which is taking some time. That's it. It is not a Ajax, right? Now, when you say, that is the reason we are saying it as a function, right? Function is set of piece of instructions. You want to execute the further job only after executing some piece of instruction. You go with the await or async. Okay, that's completely. I mean, you guys might be confused with the keywords like async, because in Ajax also we have seen the async and also. Okay. Fine, guys. For the 7 a.m. guys, we are done with this ECMA. And if you have any other questions, we'll go with the in our regular classes. We'll be discussing on this. So for the 8:30 p.m. batch, is that is okay. Tomorrow we'll go with the revise session. 8:30 batch,
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
Or,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
so tomorrow we'll be having a final revise session, guys. You guys go through each and every starting point. I mean, from the very starting, whatever we have done, we'll be going with that. And if you have any piece of question, I'm okay in revising the things or anything, whatever you have. And regarding the project, whatever it is pending, we can even do the discussion tomorrow. Okay, so the same time we'll connect and we'll do the farewell or the last class tomorrow. Okay, and Raj, you have a job, right? I mean, you want to go with the demo for the students. Is it is possible for tomorrow, or you want to postpone it?
Yeah, I can do it for tomorrow, sir. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so guys, I mean, Raj is having. I mean, Raj want to really put some interesting topics on Python. He has some good points on Python, so he want to share with you guys. And he want us to put some feedback for him, like how actually it went and all. Okay, so tomorrow session, like after having some revised points, or initially we'll go with his demo, and later I will go with the revised session or your doubt session, etc. Things and all. Okay, so make sure, as it is a tomorrow's class is the last class. Make sure everybody gets connected tomorrow. Okay, and my 7 a.m. batch, guys, thank you so much for joining even in the late night also. Even though you're attending the morning 7 a.m. class. Okay, so thanks for your cooperation here, guys. Okay. Bye for today, guys. If you have any other
Sir,
question, you can just bring it up. Yeah, please.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, please tell to 8:30 p.m. batch students to put all the ECMA videos in your batch group, sir. Telegram group, sir.
Okay. Guys, 7 a.m. guys, no one have recorded the ECMA 6 videos. 7 a.m.
Sir, I already
no one-
shared, sir, in the group.
Oh, Ramu, you already have it. So Ramna, like if Ramu is already having who is from 7 a.m., it is enough, right? Ramna?
Okay, sir. I didn't watch, sir. I will watch.
Okay, okay. Yeah, just have a check on that. If it is
Okay,
not directly ping Ramu, he should help us.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. Shreyas, I haven't replied to us.